Have you ever wondered what a transverse brace is? Have you ever wondered what it does? I think that we can build it stronger, better, faster, and stronger. Wait, I already said that. Why is it shaped like that? I'm gonna show you why I make my transverse braces look like this. Welcome to episode 5 of the Ancient Sitka Guitar Build series. Today's episode is going to be a little bit more in-depth. I want to do more of an explainer on what we're doing and why we're doing it. Because today we're doing the transverse brace, which on this old Martin guitar, we're going to use as a way to explain the way that it has been done. And in this video, we're going to talk about ways that we can possibly do it better. The transverse brace is different than the vast majority of any of the braces on the guitar. All of the ones down here are used to, yes, carry a load, but also to shape the tone of the instrument. This brace is purely structural. Its job is to keep the guitar from collapsing in on itself. On the outside of the guitar, this is where the fingerboard extension overlays. The transverse brace's job is to prevent that from pushing in, which is part of the reason why older guitars tend to need neck resets. It's also part of the whole geometry of how the neck block fits inside there. About 8 years ago, I read a book that really changed the way that I thought about this brace. It was explained to think about this transverse brace the way that you think about a load-carrying beam on the roof of a house. If you had this big, beautiful architectural timber that ran across the peak of an A-frame home, can you imagine if you were doing that, and at the very end where the beam ties into the wall of the house, you scalloped it and you made it as thin as possible? That doesn't make a whole lot of sense because that beam is designed to carry a load. But for some reason we do that on our transverse braces on our guitars. Almost everybody does it. It makes you kind of go, yeah, that doesn't make a whole lot of sense. So what I have done in the years since is completely change the way that I do it, almost by doing the actual opposite. So in this video, I want to show you how we can do this better. This is a piece of wood. I kind of pre-size these, dimension them, and put them in a workbench over there for whenever I'm ready to do transverse braces. This is a piece of Ancient Sitka from my last build. It is already dimensioned to 13 millimeters thick by 22 millimeters tall. My thought process, as opposed to scalloping the ends, is we're actually going to make the ends of this transverse brace the strongest at the end. So we're going to make it taller. It's only going to be a ½ inch tall in the middle and 3/4 of an inch tall, almost an inch tall on the parts where it ties into the side. And the reason that I do that is so that I can actually have these ends tied into the sides of my guitar, because it's going to make it the strongest. And also my thought process on this is that I want to make a termination point. If this is where the transverse brace is, and down here is the guitar top that's making all of the sound, I don't want to waste energy in this area. I don't want this part of the guitar top to try to vibrate, because that's wasted energy. It's not making any actual contribution to the tone of the instrument. So I want to concentrate all the sound of the guitar in the lower part of the soundboard. So that's just kind of where my mind is on that. I don't know if we can see on the video the pencil lines that we have drawn. I've got my center line and the section that I want to cut out on here. So we're just going to come to the bandsaw, cut that out, and then we're going to go to the spindle sander, smooth it out, just get it dimensioned to where I feel like I'm happy. Okay, so what we have now is the transverse brace in its final dimension. I actually don't do any parabolic shaping. I hear people use that term too on this particular brace. You can see, I think, how drastically different it is than what was used like in the standard model. Instead of coming down, we're actually coming up. Instead of coming down, we're actually coming up. And so what's gonna happen, this is gonna glue on right here. And what that'll allow us to do is to have all of this material as a way of tying into the sides. And it's just gonna make the guitar significantly stronger in the area where we want it to be stronger. And when we get to the point where I'm talking about doing the neck block, you'll see how I get all of that to tie in with itself and just to create an incredibly strong spot. Something else that I've done, this kind of happened, I'm sure many of you builders have had this experience where you mess up something and you have to come up with a way to fix it. Well, years ago, drilling the hole here for the truss rod, because I do my truss rod access through the sound hole, I actually blew out a bunch of the wood on the back side of it, and I had to come up with a solution. So I glued a piece of rosewood to it as a repair. Well, I actually love the look so much after I did that I do it to all of my guitars now, and it's just kind of a nice decorative piece, but it also actually adds a little bit of protection if you are in there fishing around trying to get your truss rod wrench. That Indian rosewood is a lot harder than this spruce is. So I'm actually going to get some rosewood that we can glue onto here. We'll drill the truss rod access hole, and then we're going to glue it down to the soundboard. Okay, you can see that I have just finished gluing the decorative plate onto the transverse brace. The last thing that we have to do is to drill the access hole for the truss rod, and pretty self-explanatory. We're gonna find the center of this entire transverse brace and drill that hole. I tend to use just a very slightly larger drill bit than the size of the actual Allen wrench is going to be. That way you have a little bit of wiggle room inside there. So we're gonna head over to the drill press and pop that in real quick. Okay, so we have our truss rod access hole drilled through here. Something I wanted to mention is I just picked up this little chamfer tool from StuMac, and I've had all kinds of different things over the years, but this thing works super good. So after you drill the hole, you can just come in here by hand and give it just a nice little twist, and it rounds everything over. The finished product is right here. I don't particularly have too much, I'm not married to specific distances here. I just want, like I said, I want it to be built up on the end. The next step that we're gonna do is glue it to the top. I do wanna mention before we head over to the Go Bar deck is that this is one of these braces that is not going to be radiused. We're not putting the 35-foot radius on this brace. We want this to be flat because remember, above this is where our fingerboard extension is gonna go. So we are doming the top except for everything above the transverse brace. So it's gonna be flat. So the last thing that I did was I came over to my smoothest thing that I have in the workshop. It's a piece of granite, but for you it might be a table saw surface, and you're gonna wanna get this thing sanded perfectly flat. So we're gonna head over to the Go Bar deck and glue it down. Okay, so here is the top from the last episode. I've actually taken my radius dish and flipped it upside down so that I have a flat surface on here. You can kind of tell, see how this is rocking back and forth because this has obviously got a dish in it. This is where you're gonna see the advantage to my acrylic templates again. I'm actually just gonna set this bad boy right in there, and this transverse brace that we just made is gonna sit smack dab inside there as well. What I am doing is I'm gonna make sure that my truss rod access hole is perfectly aligned with the center of this. It's centered, I think.
I think it's lunchtime, Chris.
I'm
so hungry.
It's almost lunchtime. Almost lunchtime. Okay, so we've got that centered. I've dry fitted and dry glued up everything to make sure that all the truss rod, that the Go Bar clamps were at the right height. And so we're just gonna put some glue on there and clamp it into place. I'm actually gonna put a very small piece of binding on top of here as just a clamping caul so that I don't dent this. Because remember, all of the other braces that we have on here, we're actually gonna shape and voice. So I'm gonna be removing wood. This one is at its final dimensions already. So we don't wanna put any dents in it. We wanna keep it really pretty how it is. So I'm gonna grab some glue and we'll slap her on there. All right, so that about does it for the transverse brace glue up. We still have just a couple more pieces that we need to glue on. We'll go back to the Martin top to show you. I need to do the sound hole reinforcement, and we're also gonna do the, what I call the fan braces on the Ancient Sitka top. I will probably just do those off camera. It's simple, you just glue them on, no big deal. But I think that so far we've given you a good sense of how that transverse brace is different from a standard transverse brace, but you're really gonna get the big aha moment once we glue that top to the sides, and you'll get to see how I cut out my kerfing and everything just clicks and locks into place, and you end up with this incredibly solid joint between the top and the sides of the guitar. But it's food for thought. If you guys have any other ideas or you do your transverse braces differently, please comment below and let us know. Matt and I appreciate you being along for the ride on our very first video with the new camera rig. And yeah, make sure you like, subscribe, tell your friends, and as always, contribute in the comment section, and we appreciate it. And remember, always measure twick, kadunk.
Nice. Okay. We might lose ad revenue from that, but whatever.
It's a chicken foot.
Yeah, exactly.